We're not beauty aficionados, and actually when we started Nykaa, I think in our whole house you could just about find one or two lipsticks.
You started this with your mum, Falguni Nayar. What was the thinking there?
When we looked at India, we realized there was a complete vacuum and there was no real one-stop shop for beauty at all.
We should rewind a bit back to 2013. When you looked at what that beauty market was.
The market was completely underdeveloped. You'd buy your kajal from the local kirana store and you'd have to go to a mall half an hour away to buy an interesting perfume.
You have that competition across spaces. Do you think a lot about how daunting that competition is?
Nykaa is the market leader with over 30% market share.
What are conversations around the dining table like?
We're a team of about 10 senior leaders and 3 of them happen to be one family.
Do you guys talk shop?
We try to set rules, but those rules are invariably always broken.
Who's the biggest workaholic amongst the 3 of you?
It hasn't been a single day that I've not jumped out of bed to go to work.
FSN or Nykaa is one of the premier platform companies that has had a lot of focus recently, not just from the stock market, shareholders, but in the entire space as well. One of the few platform companies that is actually profitable, because that tends to be a big issue when we talk about it. Today on the show, we have a very exclusive interview with Adwaita Nayar, who's co-founder of Nykaa. We're at this beautiful office here in Mumbai. Adwaita, thank you so much for your time with us here at NDTV Profit.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for this conversation.
Yeah. So before we get to what, the last financial year looked like, your quarterly numbers, which were, I think, your second highest ever and all of that, I want to start at the beginning of the Nykaa story. Since 2013, you are co-founder. You started this with your mum, Falguni Nayar, a legendary professional, and then you start this business. What was the thinking there?
So I think about 13 years ago, my mom always had an itch to be an entrepreneur. And she started thinking about what would be interesting spaces. We sort of narrowed down on beauty. I think globally there were some amazing beauty businesses that we'd been studying. And when we looked at India, we realized there was a complete vacuum and there was no real one-stop shop for beauty at all. And so that's when the vision of Nykaa came through. And we always said that we would be an online, but also an offline player in beauty and try to create the category for the country. It's been truly a joyful 13 years. I think I feel very fortunate that I've been able to be part of this journey under the leadership of my mom and her guidance, and we've thoroughly enjoyed every minute.
But why beauty? Is it that you were big enthusiasts, big users, and this was something that beauty was a category that you were passionate about?
I always joke that we were not beauty aficionados. And actually, when we started Nykaa, I think in our whole house, you could just about find 1 or 2 lipsticks. Obviously, the case is very different now, where we have a lot of product and we've grown to really love the category. But I think it was more from the perspective of there was a real customer need, there was a customer white space. And then fundamentally, it's been a really interesting business to build. Online, offline, technology. There's so many aspects and elements of the core business that we've loved building.
Yeah, but we should rewind a bit back to 2013. When you looked at what that beauty market was, and a few dominant brands, international brands available at few select places and across large cities more than anything else. And, someone's traveling abroad, then it was still happening in 2013. And not so much of buying stuff online, especially high value stuff. So how do you hone in on a cross section of all of these factors?
Yeah, so you're totally right that the market was completely underdeveloped in 2013 on both levels, right? Like there weren't enough brands in the country to begin with. And even the brands that were there, their distribution was all over the place, right? There was no one-stop shop. When you think about even how you and I would shop for beauty back in 2013, you'd buy your kajal from the local kirana store and you'd have to go to a mall half an hour away to buy an interesting perfume. So we clearly spotted an opportunity. Really from day one, the vision was to do online and offline both. We started with online as we were, first-time entrepreneurs, and online is, less capital intensive initially. So we started with online, but very shortly thereafter, about 2-3 years after, our retail journey began. But it's more that we felt that the space was very empty. I think globally we had seen that beauty can be a really fantastic, valuable business. There are a lot of parts of the beauty business that make it very exciting. It has some of the highest sales per square foot throughput even globally. And then, we started with online as the first logical step, but we quickly expanded thereafter.
But having said that, even now, your mix in terms of revenue or customers coming in would be skewed more towards online, one would assume. Is the offline idea the same even now? Do you think it's as relevant even now?
Yeah, 100%. I think, I think about 90% of our business is online and 10% of our, GMV comes from offline. But I feel that ratio doesn't tell the full story. In offline, we have about 237 stores spread across 79 cities. We have over 2.5 lakh square footage of real estate where we sell. And we are the largest beauty specialty retailer in the country, offline speaking. So yeah, sure, when you look at the entire Nykaa revenue, the online business is just so large that offline feels, as a percentage small, but in absolute terms, the offline business is super significant.
No, but that's not what I'm trying to say. Is not that the offline business is not significant. Is it losing relevance, or does it have the same relevance as you first started, considering how patterns are moving and the competition coming in as well?
I think offline is super relevant. I think when you look at really any industry, any consumption category in India, there's still more than 50, 60, 70% that is happening offline. And even in beauty, it's considered about 15 to 20% maybe headed online, but the rest is all offline. So offline cannot be ignored. And, even in our offline stores, they end up being extremely important for our more premium and luxury brands. So for those brands, offline actually contributes about 50% of their revenue and online about 50%.
Fair enough. You want to buy a really expensive perfume, you want to go
it
and do the touch and feel and all of that. I want to come just for a bit on the financials and the kind of performance that we've seen. FY25 was a good year for Nykaa. Like I said, one of the few platform companies which is very focused on profitability, healthy margins as well. Do you see margins remaining in that category of 6.5-7%, which is a bump up we saw in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, I think we feel that FY25 and Q4 within that was a very strong performance by the company. I think just to quickly recap, the business in FY25 delivered about 15,600 crores of GMV. That's a growth of about 27-28% year on year. In a muted market where, growth rates for beauty have been early 20s and growth rates for fashion have been like sub 10%, I think it's an impressive performance. But beyond just the growth, I think Nykaa's delivered some serious profitability improvements. The EBITDA for the year is up about 40% to about 470 crores with a margin profile of 6%, as you suggested, and PAT is up 80%. So I think a lot of our playbook is playing out, and as our three businesses all sort of keep progressing on each of their life cycles, the profitability is only improving. So yeah, in terms of your question of can we see that 6% going up, I think the answer is yes. And it's predominantly driven by the fact that, we have three businesses. We have our beauty business, which is more mature, more stable, and is standalone already, delivering almost 9% EBITDA. And then you have your your fashion and your superstore distribution businesses, which are newer, which are loss-making. And so as those start to make money and the losses reduce, and at least in fashion, we are behind the peak of investment, the overall consolidated EBITDA will go up.
In terms of quarter four by itself, a small slide from quarter three, that would be due to seasonal factors, one presumes, because quarter three has bunched up of festive seasons, weddings, etc.
Yeah. So quarter three is always the strongest quarter in absolute terms in any given year. So there's no difference in the pattern this year. All of that being said, Q4, from a year-on-year performance perspective, we saw an acceleration of growth in Q4 from a year-on-year perspective. So beauty grew at 30%, fashion grew at 18%, all up from their Q4 growth rates.
In terms of consumption patterns, because you have actually a very interesting bird's eye view on what consumption is looking like, and the lipstick indicator is one of them to show signs of, consumption pain or muted consumption. What are the kind of trends that you're seeing, or you would have an insight into in terms of what consumption is looking like, the urban-rural mix, or in terms of people marking down their consumption?
Yeah. So I think Nykaa has honestly not seen any slowdown. And that's reflective of the growth rates that you're seeing, which is between 25 to 30% across all the businesses. So we're not seeing a slowdown. And no matter how we chop it, whether we chop it by premium brands, lower price brands, by cities and so forth. So I think the company is lucky in that sense. I think there's a lot of hard work going on behind the scenes to constantly improve assortment, to constantly improve performance marketing. And generally, there's a positive trend with more people moving online. So I think that's good. I think to your question of we have this unique vantage point. And so we do see a lot of other trends, which I'm happy to talk about.
Sure.
So, I think a trend that we've seen when I reflect on my last 12 years in the company, like a very strong trend I've seen is a sophistication of the Indian woman and her beauty consumption. When we started the business, the things that would sell were kajals and bullet lipsticks. I think today what sells is, of course, those also sell, but you have their carts are much more vibrant, much larger. You have sunscreens, you have serums, you have interesting moisturizers, you have interesting hair products. What went from being just a makeup market has become a makeup, skincare, and hair care, and frankly, even fragrances is now taking off. So you see this beautiful sophistication. And I think every year I'm really impressed as to how the cart changes.
In terms of fashion, let's talk about some of those verticals. And I know fashion is close to your heart, in a sense, your baby. Fashion is something which is extremely competitive. And if I had to look at it very clinically, just from the numbers point of view, fashion, like you said, needs to still come up to par to a more mature segment of the business. What are the biggest challenges you see there, and what gives you an advantage, in your view, over others?
When we think about our business, we definitely don't think year to year. We think about it in a multi-decade manner, and we feel that the company needs to have a fashion play. I think fashion is, by any measure, much, much larger than beauty as a market. You could say it's 5x the size of the beauty market. And therefore, being able to play in that market and for Nykaa to have a foot in the door in that market is really important. The business is only 5 years old. And in 5 years, fashion has become almost a 4,000 crore GMV business. So it's very sizable. We do a lot of customer work and customer research, which shows that in many cases, we're the number one platform from a preference for trend and curation perspective. So we've chosen to be more curated, more trendy, more fashionable as a destination. And I think in that space, we actually rank and do really well. I think it is a younger business, and so therefore it is still in growth and investment phase. It is still losing money, but I think the peak loss is behind us, and every year the profitability profile improves dramatically. In FY25 alone, the profitability of this segment improved at an EBITDA level by 200 bips. And so we're very clearly on a path to break even. And
what's the timeline in your mind?
We're not putting an explicit date to it. But if last year we improved by 200 bips and we're now at negative 8%, I think you can do your own sort of math and say that it's not in the distant future.
Is that something that you, as someone who leads that space as an entrepreneur, are very, very focused on? Just delving a bit into what your mind is like when you look at these numbers and you assess performance, because you are now a listed company, right? So what your balance sheet looks like is something that analysts and investors will fall through as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, from us as folks making the decision on what the business strategy needs to be, I think, probably 5-6 years ago, we decided that we're not going to just be a beauty company. And we're very clear that we want to have a beauty arm, we want to have a fashion arm, we want to have a distribution arm, which is called the Superstore business, which we're building, which is a B2B business. We want to have a house of brands business, which is where we're creating our own brands. And finally, we want to have, our Middle East business. So we definitely internally don't just look at one business, which is, our current large business, the beauty.com and the beauty stores business. We think we have 5 verticals, and we're investing in each of them with fantastic CEOs, leaders, investment, commitment, and we're going to commit to them. And I think I always say that businesses take a decade to build at the very least. And so judging them before that time period is short-sighted. I think today everyone looks at beauty and thinks it's a success, but I think if you'd met us at year 5 in beauty, there were a lot of naysayers as well then.
Yeah. Now, like I said, when you are a listed company and then quarter on quarter, you have to come back with those results, and investors are putting faith in your product, and then that's possibly what happens. And you've given us a sense of a 4-year timeline at the rate of 200 pips. So that's something to keep in mind.
I wouldn't say a 4-year timeline. I think it can be far more rapid. But yes, I think it's on a very clear path to profitability in the near future. I know where you're going, in the sense that we're now a publicly listed company. I think us as promoters and founders of this company, we're always going to have a very long-term view. And therefore, like, we're not just trying to, please anyone on a quarterly basis. I think we're doing the right thing for the company for the long term and making sure that our portfolio of businesses and strategies is correct.
Fair enough. Just in terms of what has changed in the landscape since you started in 2013, and I would say if you look at it from a bird's eye view, you definitely had a first mover advantage. So the moat was lower at that point. A large player has come in with very deep pockets as well, and is doing pretty much the same thing. They have the app, they have the website, they have the stores, and then you have that competition across spaces. Do you think a lot about how daunting that competition is, and how much is that at the back of your mind when you're looking at strategy?
To be honest, everyone's talking about competition now, but competition has been entering the space pretty much 3 years after we started the business. And whether it was other e-commerce players who were really focused on beauty, whether it was the large department stores in India that suddenly became very focused on beauty, whether it was international beauty retailers who entered.
A Sephora.
There has been competition pretty much from 2014, 2015 in a very meaningful way. So it's not that competition is new to us, but the truth of the matter is that Nykaa is the market leader with over 30% market share, and we're only gaining market share. Today, our business in beauty is growing at over 30% when the market is growing at 20%. So to be honest, competition is not affecting our business at this time, and internally at least, it keeps us on our toes because we definitely feel that, we have to keep our game really A+ if we want to continue to be relevant. And I think competition does that for any industry in which it comes, and no industry is immune to competition.
So what is the strategy or the way forward? Is it more investments, being present in more places, larger discounts, larger customer acquisition costs? Or is it now drilling down on more profitable and more margin accretive kind of segments?
So I think, like I said, we have these 5 verticals that we're focused on, whether it's beauty, fashion, our house of brands business, our distribution business, our Middle East business. Every business is different in terms of its life cycle, where it is, and therefore what it's focused on. But let's take beauty, which is, the largest business at the moment. Beauty, the focus remains assortment building. This past year itself, you might think that the business has been here for 12, 13 years. What assortment is being built now? But this last year itself, we've had some of the most exciting brand launches. Most of them have been international brands that we brought into the country, whether it's, most recently the Chanel launch was huge. It's something we worked on for over 5 years. But even other brands that have launched this year, whether it's NARS, whether it's YSL, whether it's GHD straighteners, whether it's Olaplex, there's still a lot of growth to be had just by bringing the world's best assortment to India.
Going forward, where would you see that next big idea coming from? Where do you think the next push comes from in all of the spaces that you are at? Is it doing things faster? And I ask that because, of course, Nykaa now is, the latest sort of thing to pull people in. Do you think that that's the way? Deliver faster or deliver bigger and better?
Look, I think in terms of where our focus is, I think it's about executing each of our existing 5 businesses extremely well. Our hands are full in executing these businesses well. But I think, more tactically, things that are on our mind are, continue to build on assortment on both platforms, really embracing AI and making AI improve the customer experience. We're going to see far more personalized experiences coming through. And I think that's amazing for the customer. Then bringing in AI into our internal teams and processes and efficiencies and dynamics.
Tell me more about that, about how you look at, plugging in AI into the whole experience.
Yeah. So I think AI is now obviously a focus for every company. And I think we are also extremely clear that it has to be really a top 1, 2, 3 priority for us as a management team. The way we internally think about it is there is AI that will change the customer experience, and then there's AI that will change our internal team ways of working experience. And we now have a focused task force that is systematically implementing a bunch of things on both those sides. On customer experience, it's going to change the way people shop, discover, browse, search. I think the shopping journey could look quite different very soon. And on the internal ways of working. It's changing the way we're doing cataloging, the way we're doing operations, the way we're handling finance in the back end, the way we're handling image creation. It's mind-boggling, really. I think it's a once in a generation, once in a lifetime opportunity to integrate this well.
I'm just thinking about brand recognition and brand positioning. So, for example, something like beauty and products, and you talked about Chanel. I'll talk a bit more about your in-house brands in a bit as well. What came to mind is that you right now have, from a customer perspective, large retailers. For example, you have an Amazon, or you have a Walmart or Flipkart or whatever that sell everything. But they have not been able to make a dent on a focused beauty category kind of a product like yours. Why do you think that is? Is it because of the specific nature of the customer when it comes to beauty?
I think Nykaa has always been big believers in vertical commerce. I mean, that's the proposition upon which our entire business is built. It's why we have a separate app for beauty and a separate app for fashion. It would have been very convenient to just merge the two and not have to acquire customers uniquely. But we've always made the decision to keep them separate because we are believers that vertical commerce and the focus that that brings in designing customer experiences that are very specific to the category that they're servicing is the right way to create a differentiated experience. And yes, I do believe that beauty and fashion both are categories where vertical focus helps a lot. They're very complex categories with very unique patterns in terms of what sells and SKUs and how customers discover. And I think only when you build them sort of separately can you do justice. I think just to give you a small example, beauty is a very shade-driven business. There's so much technology that we built around just servicing shades well. Fashion is a very long-tail discovery-led business with 10x the number of SKUs our beauty business has. So in fashion, it's all about taking customers down this rabbit hole of seeing more and more and or dikhao. And so therefore the way you build your technology in both these experiences is very different. And if you try to merge it, you end up not doing justice to one or the other. Of course, horizontals can be built, and Amazon is a perfect example of that. That's a wonderful, beautiful business. But our particular play is to go vertical and then design for each of those verticals.
It just came to mind because it's a very different strategy. You have one player who sells everything from a spoon to a wardrobe, and then you're very, very focused, and obviously that's working for you. Just want to come to partnerships. Chanel was the big one this year. Is there going to be more in that direction? Is that somewhere where you want to go? Will the focus also remain on in-house brands?
Yeah, I think bringing the world's best brands to the country has always been a big part of the Nykaa philosophy, because we feel that Indian consumers deserve the world's best, and if we can be a partner to these global brands to bring them in, that's a great thing for us to be able to do. So over the years, we brought in brands like Charlotte Tilbury, Huda Beauty, most recently Chanel, but we have a massive portfolio of global brands on the beauty side. And frankly, we're replicating that strategy in fashion as well, where about 2 years ago, we brought in Revolve, which is an amazing Los Angeles-based retailer. Or last year, we signed a deal with Foot Locker, where we brought them into the country as their digital partner. So that's always going to be a play for us. And we have a large team that is constantly focused on international business development. On house of brands, which is our other strategy, which is to build our own portfolio of brands, that has become more of a focus in the last couple of years. It's more of a recent focus. But somewhere along the way, Falguni, our CEO and founder, has a vision that beyond being retailers, can we also be brand builders, and can we own a bunch of beautiful, compelling brands that are loved by customers? And so we've been on that journey, and we've built, about 7 brands on the beauty side, 2 of which were acquisitions. The rest were built in-house, and that vertical is doing extremely well.
Are these higher margin businesses?
Absolutely. I think anytime you make your own product, it is higher margin than being a retailer.
What are the differentials, if you can just give us a sense?
Typically, like a retailer might have a 40 to 50% margin, but a brand's business, and these are all there's so many beautiful brand businesses out there. You can see those, but somewhere between 65 to 80% would be the gross margins there. So there's a significant differential, but we don't do it just from the perspective of gross margin differential. I think there's nothing more compelling than being able to own brands that consumers love. And I think Nykaa is one such brand, the retailer itself. But if we can also create beauty brands like K-Beauty, Dot & Key, Nykaa Cosmetics, Earth Rhythm, we have a brand called Wanderlust, which is our bath and body brand. if those can also become brands that consumers in India know and love and aspire to, I think that's a very valuable business to run and enjoy.
Just, and we have a few minutes of our interview to go, Adwaita, but what's also very interesting and wholesome actually about the business is that it's completely family run in that sense. Of course, you have professionals on every vertical, but at the helm of it, you have Falguni and then you and Achin both working together. What are conversations around the family, around the dining table like for you guys? Do you talk shop when you're at home?
No, so I think I don't think we're family run. I think the way we see it is we're a team of about 10 senior leaders, and 3 of them happen to be one family. But internally we try to work really collaboratively, and I think there's a magic that comes in this group of 10. We have a beautiful way of working. And yes, it just happens to be the 3 of us are family members, and we are, promoters in this business. And I think what that brings is a level of continuity. We're not going anywhere. Like each of us is more committed than the next to be here, to commit ourselves to this business. And that brings a lot of continuity to the team and to the strategy. So I think that brings, a great balance. And I'm really also very grateful for the professional team that we have supporting us. And we work hand in hand. And so many of the leaders we have are people I personally admire so much and would happily work for, just because each of them is better than the next in terms of experience and management style and leadership capabilities.
But coming back to the point, at home, do you guys talk shop?
Yeah, too much. I think we try to set rules around, when we stop talking about work, when we don't talk about work, but those rules are invariably always broken by someone or the other. So there's absolutely no fine line between work and life.
What's the biggest workaholic amongst the 3 of you?
I think the problem when you work in a family business is someone is always in complete workaholic mode. So even when the other person wants to chill, someone is rearing to go. So I think each of us kind of get activated at different times on different topics. Look, I think there's no line between family and work, but it's also something we enjoy so much. And I think in the last 13 years, there hasn't been a single day that I've not jumped out of bed to go to work. And I know that that's a real privilege. And I really enjoy it. I feel very lucky.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Adwaita, for this wonderful conversation and giving us a glimpse into the machine that runs Nykaa as well and the strategy going forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you.